Hello everyone, welcome to week 4 of TESOL 330. This week we are learning 3 core areas: reading, writing, and AI. And here is what we are going to do today. First, we'll contextualize the target topics. Basically, we'll explore how reading, writing, and AI are interconnected in call contexts. Then we'll review some key concepts and issues from the readings, especially chapter 2 of Egbert and Shorrockney. And finally, we'll open up space for reflection and discussion so you can connect these ideas to your own teaching experiences or future classrooms. Let's begin by looking at some important variables that affect how learners read and write, especially in tech-driven environments. This slide summarizes some of the key variables that affect reading and writing instruction according to the chapter. First, we've got the idea of an authentic audience. This means giving learners a real reason to read or write, and that's beyond just doing it for a grade. For example, writing a blog post or peer feedback can be much more motivating than writing for a teacher, right? Second, knowing a student's first language can be very helpful because it gives us insight into possible transfer issues or a strength that L1 might bring into L2 learning. Third is schema. This refers to the learner's background knowledge. If the learner is already familiar with the topic, their comprehension improves dramatically. Now let's focus on reading and writing goals. When it comes to goals for reading and writing, there are 3 big types. First is speed. How efficiently students can read or write. Next is accuracy. How grammatically and structurally correct their output is. And finally, there is comprehension, whether learners can actually understand or convey the intended meaning. Now let's build on that by looking at the specific skills learners need to succeed in reading and writing tasks. So here is a more detailed list of skills that support reading and writing development. You'll notice that many of these skills are cognitive-heavy strategies, like summarizing, identifying the main point, and predicting what might come next. These skills go beyond decoding. They're about meaning making. Other skills like evaluating arguments or drawing conclusions, they're more advanced, but again, they're essential for academic writing and critical reading. We also see some practical reading strategies like using sight words and understanding unknown vocabulary using context clues or word parts. Just a quick note on sight words. Sight words are words that learners often recognize instantly without having to decode them. Think of high-frequency words like the, was, or what. They often don't follow regular spelling rules, so learners benefit from memorizing them by sight to read more fluently. All right, back to the strategies. As teachers, we should find tools and tasks that help learners develop these skills in context, not in isolation. In the following slide, we'll break down some of the key concepts that support effective instruction for reading and writing in call environments. Here we are zooming out a bit to look at the big picture principles. First, effective call activities should contribute to skills development. Things like noticing features of language, getting comprehensible input, producing meaningful output, engaging social interaction, and feedback. Next, we want to provide differentiated or personalized learning, and technology can really help here. Tools like adaptive readers or collaborative writing platforms allow students to work at their own pace and level. Then there is authenticity. According to Egbert and Shorrockney, it's not the tool or the text that defines authenticity. It's whether students find the task meaningful. Finally, we are reminded that we shouldn't just assign reading and writing. we should teach learners how to read and write. And that means teaching strategies explicitly. And that can be done by providing extensive opportunities for practice through the use of technology and tools. And more importantly, teachers should allow students to use those tools a lot. Now that we've established this foundation, we'll look at in the following slide, we'll look at the 5 criteria given in this chapter and compare them with the call tips you've learned before. Now let's take a look at Egbert and Charokny's 5 criteria for evaluating call software or call tools. Goals. The question is, what is the learning objective? Presentation. How's the material displayed? Is it user-friendly, accessible, and visually supportive? Appropriateness. Is the content level appropriate? Does it match learners' needs, backgrounds, or proficiency? Outcomes. Are learners producing language as a result of using the tool? Are they doing more than just passive clicking? And finally, we got evaluation. Is the tool giving meaningful feedback? Is there any type of correction, encouragement, or guidance that helps the learner move forward? Now, on the right side, I've pulled the tips that are especially relevant to reading-based call tools. You can see how they align with the 5 criteria on the left. For goals and appropriateness, we want to select call materials with appropriate reading texts that match the learner's level and purpose. For presentation, it's essential to highlight keywords or phrases, and that's what we call salient information. So learners can visually focus on what matters by the help of salient input or salient information. When it comes to interaction, part of both presentation and outcomes, tools should create opportunities to engage, whether that's clicking, dragging, answering, or interacting with peers. Under outcomes, we also consider whether the tool actually teaches something, like helping learners learn English through reading, not just scanning text. For evaluation, call tools should track comprehension and give feedback on language knowledge, and not just correct or wrong, but something more detailed and useful. And finally, the broader goal of helping learners develop reading strategies. That's where strategy scaffolding comes in. A tool should support the way learners think, not just what they click or what they tap. So as you evaluate or design call tools, especially for reading, try to keep these principles and perspectives in mind. So far, we've covered the 5 criteria suggested by Egbert and Charokny regarding the evaluation of call tools, and we've also compared them with the 5 or 6 tips by Chappell and Jamieson for designing call tasks and tools. Now let's take a look at Lee et al. 2017 and their discussion of tech and L2 writing. In this article, they categorize call writing tools into 3 major groups. The first is Web 2 applications, which include collaborative tools like Google Docs, wikis, blogs, and other platforms where learners can co-construct and co-edit texts. These tools are not specifically designed for language pedagogy. However, they offer tons of opportunities for peer interaction and collaborative writing. Next is automated writing evaluation, or AWEs. AWE tools are designed to give learners automated feedback on their writing. Tools like Criterion, MyAccess, Correct English, and if you know of any other tool, please share it in the chat or on YouTube in the comments. These tools provide feedback on grammar, organization, and mechanics. And though they are not perfect, they're increasingly being used to supplement human-generated feedback, especially in large classes. And then we have corpus-based tools. which are resources like Coca. You must be familiar with that. Corpus-based tools generally give learners or teachers access to large collections of authentic language data. Learners can utilize these to analyze how words and phrases are typically used in context. Such use helps them improve their accuracy and appropriateness in writing. Now, the take-home message. These tools that we've just talked about are no doubt promising. However, they're not a one-size-fits-all. Many of them are designed or adapted to fit a specific learning and teaching contexts. So, as educators or researchers, we need to consider how and why we are using these tools and whether they meet the pedagogical needs of our own learners. Now let's turn to Kong et al. 2023. They focus specifically on ChatGPT and its role in language teaching and learning. They highlight how ChatGPT as a generative AI tool offers the potential for personalized and interactive language practice. It can give feedback, it can simulate conversation, and it can help learners engage with language in a more dynamic and realistic way. But of course, AI use is not without these challenges. They mention three main concerns. First and foremost, ethical issues like data privacy and plagiarism. Next is accuracy. As we all know, AI-generated responses may not always be reliable. And finally, cultural bias. ChatGPT is largely trained on English-based sources, and that might reflect a limited cultural perspective as well as perception. So, what's the solution? The authors argue that teachers and learners need to build digital competencies, which means we need to learn how to utilize these tools ethically and effectively. The take-home message. Although ChatGPT is an exciting and promising tool, it should be used thoughtfully and alongside other teaching methods, not as a replacement per se. Now let's take a step back and start with a question. What is reading? It might seem obvious, but reading is more than just recognizing words on a page. It's a complex meaning-making process. When we read, we are not just decoding letters. We are actively constructing meaning, making predictions, drawing inferences, and connecting ideas to what we already know. Reading involves, in this case, both lower-level skills like recognizing vocabulary and sentence structure, and higher-level strategies like analyzing and evaluating what we read. So when we explore reading in the context of language learning, let's keep that in mind, that a reading skill is not a passive act. It's an active, cognitive, and interactive process. So now that we've defined reading as a complex, meaning-making process, let's test how complex it can be with a quick activity. It's going to take only 5 seconds, but it'll make a big point. All right, here's the task. Look at the sentence in the box. You have 5 seconds to count how many times the letter F appears. How many? There you go. All right, you can share your response in the chat box, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, yeah, item D is the right answer. Did you hit it right? Wrong? Or tell me why. Maybe we can discuss this in class. Okay, let's try another experiment. please take a moment to read the passage and don't worry about the spelling. It's gonna look strange at first, but try to read through it anyway. You have 5 to 10 seconds to read the passage, please. Okay, that was wild, right? You were probably able to read it almost effortlessly, even though most of the words are completely jumbled. So what's going on here? This is a great example of the top-down processing involved in the reading. Your brain doesn't read every single letter. Rather, it looks at the overall shape of the word, the context, and fills in the blanks for you. So, according to this idea, as long as the first and last letters are in the right place, your brain can make sense of the mess in the middle. Here is a question we can discuss in class. What do these texts tell us about the reading process? You may also consider sharing your response in the comments. So we've seen how your brain can fill in the blanks when it comes to scrambled letters or unfamiliar words. Now let's talk about how much vocabulary knowledge is actually needed before guessing from context becomes effective. Here is a quick question for you. According to researchers like Nation, what percentage of words in a text should an ESL learner already know to be able to guess the rest from context? So you may think about that and share your response in the chat or in the comments on YouTube. 3, 2, 1, boom, 98%. Well, learners need to already understand about 98% of the words in a text to have a realistic shot at guessing the rest through context. Anything lower than that, like 90% or even 93%, might sound high, but it actually leaves too many unknown words on the page, which makes comprehension and guessing much more harder. And how can we do this? One, by simplifying text, not necessarily authentic texts, and selecting appropriate passages. So now we know that to guess from context, learners need to already understand a huge portion of the vocabulary, around 98%. That tells us how important it is to scaffold texts and support learners as they read. But now let's take a step back and ask, what are we actually trying to achieve when we teach reading? Speaking of the goals of teaching reading, the first one is to help learners understand the meaning of the text. That's important because it helps us make sure learners can actually comprehend what they're reading. But reading in a language class isn't just about comprehension. Reading is not the only goal of instruction. As language teachers, we use reading not only to access meaning, but also as a tool to develop other areas of language proficiency. And that brings us to goal 2, which is to help learners develop their overall language skills and strategies for language use. That means improving vocabulary, grammar awareness, discourse strategies, critical thinking, and even writing and speaking through reading. So teaching reading is about understanding texts, but it's also about helping students become better language users overall. All right, let's recap. Reading instruction isn't just about understanding the text. It's about supporting overall language development. But how do we do this? What happens in the brain while reading? Let's take this simple sentence. The dog beat the cat. And you'll notice that some of the words are color-coded here. But the point is, when we read a sentence like this, we don't go letter by letter or word by word in a completely linear way. Reading involves, however, both bottom-up and top-down processing, and these happen simultaneously. Bottom-up means we process the similar units like sounds, letters, and words, On the other hand, top-down means we are using our background knowledge, expectations, and context clues to make meaning. So when we read "The dog bit the cat," we don't just wait until we fully analyze every grapheme or phoneme. We are predicting, chunking, and understanding the meaning as we go. So reading, we can say, is a dynamic, iterative process, not just decoding. Speaking of top-down processing, we should learn a bit about schema theory. Schema theory highlights the power of background knowledge in reading. So what does schema theory tell us exactly? It tells us that reading isn't just about decoding words on a page. It's also about what the reader already knows. Goodman, in this sense, famously described reading as a guessing game, where readers are constantly making predictions, testing those predictions, and then confirming or adjusting them based on what they read next. So, when we read, we bring our own mental frameworks, commonly known as schemata, and we bring it to every text. And that knowledge, schemata, shapes how we interpret, anticipate, and make sense of the information we read. So imagine two students reading the very same article about climate change. One has a strong science background and the other doesn't. Same words on the page, but very different experiences. And that's schema in action. Now let's pause for a moment and reflect on these two questions. Number one, why is schema theory important not just for reading, but also for writing, listening, speaking, and even critical thinking? Two, how can we as instructors actively tap into a student's schema? Because if we can connect the content to what the students already know, we can make it more meaningful and way more comprehensible. So please reflect on these questions. Share your response in the comments or in the chat box, or we can discuss this in class. Now that we've looked at schema theory and how background knowledge plays a role, let's step back and take a broader look at what actually goes into reading comprehension. Reading is a complex process made up of several interconnected components, and we're going to have a walkthrough here. First, grapheme to phoneme decoding. This is the basic skill of matching letters to sounds. It's especially important for beginning readers or for learners whose first language uses a different writing system. Next, we got word recognition. Here we are talking about the ability to recognize words quickly and effortlessly. Think of this as the mental dictionary in action. So with word recognition, the reader is able to retrieve the meaning of a word without having to stop and analyze it. Next, we got syntactic feature recognition. Syntactic feature recognition involves understanding how words function in a sentence. For example, is that word a noun, a verb, or what? After that, we got intratextual perception. This is the ability to see how parts of a text relate to each other. For example, recognizing that a pronoun refers to a noun mentioned earlier, or understanding how two sentences connect logically, which is technically called coherence. Next, we got prior knowledge or schemata. This is something we touched upon earlier. But just to reinforce, background knowledge or schemata helps readers make predictions, fill in gaps, and interpret meaning based on what they already know. Finally, we got metacognition. Metacognition refers to the reader's awareness of their own reading process. For example, am I understanding this? Or should I reread that sentence? Skilled readers constantly monitor their own comprehension as they go. So, as you can see, reading comprehension isn't just a single skill. It's a multi-layered process involving decoding, grammar, context, memory, and self-monitoring. And as educators, we can support learners by identifying which of these components they are struggling with and providing targeted strategies to help them improve. All right, now let's look at the common challenges unskilled or less experienced readers face. First, there is the issue of a slow meaning making. If a reader is unfamiliar with the vocabulary, phrases, or grammatical structures, they end up spending so much time decoding that they lose track of the overall meaning. It's like solving a puzzle without knowing what the final image should look like. For sure, it slows everything down. Second, many struggling readers have limited linguistic knowledge, not just vocabulary knowledge, but also awareness of syntax, collocations, morphology, etc., etc. And that gap in linguistic understanding makes comprehension even more difficult. Third is that many struggling readers have little experience with second language texts and contexts. And the less familiar readers are with certain genres, discourse patterns, or writing conventions, the harder it is for them to navigate a text efficiently. And finally, without enough understanding or proper understanding of what's been read so far, learners struggle to predict what's coming next. Skilled readers, however, are constantly anticipating the next word, next sentence, or idea. But unskilled readers don't have enough contextual cues to do that. These issues overall create a common domino effect. One weakness slows the entire process down. And before long, the reader may feel frustrated, lost, or disengaged. And that's exactly why understanding these challenges is important. All right, let's pause for a moment and think about this statement together. We use similar strategies for readings regardless of the purpose of the task. What do you think? Do you agree with this idea? Or do you think the strategies we use change depending on why we are reading? For example, do you read the same way when you're trying to enjoy a novel versus when you're scanning a report to find one key number? So, I'd like you to take a moment and choose one of the options below. You may also share your response in the chat or in the comments on YouTube. Let's now explore the different types of reading we engage in. Again, it should be highlighted that not all reading is the same, and we often shift between types depending on our goal. We'll start with sorry. We'll start with receptive reading, which is the kind of reading we do when we are reading something familiar or easy, like a narrative or a set of instructions. It's more automatic. We're not analyzing deeply, and we're just taking it very quickly. Next, we have a reflective reading, which is the opposite side. Here we slow down, we pause, we reflect deeply, we think about what we've read. Maybe we ask ourselves questions, highlight key parts, or relate the content more rigorously to something we already know. Then there is skim reading or skimming, which we often do when we just want to get the gist of something. We move through the text quite rapidly, picking up on headings, keywords, or first and last sentences of paragraphs to figure out the general idea of the text. And finally, we have scanning, which is more targeted. This is when you are looking for a specific piece of information, for example, finding a date in a schedule or a statistic in a report. Now I want to direct your attention to the quote at the bottom from Davis 1995. It says, "In real life, scanning and skimming often overlap. So even though we define them separately, they tend to occur together. When you scan for information, you're likely also skimming parts of the text. And when you skim the text, you often end up scanning for specific information. So both are quick and strategic, not deep reading, and they're meant to help us search more than process deeply. And finally, knowing when to use each strategy is a big part of becoming a skilled reader. In this slide, we are looking at a range of strategies that skilled readers often employ depending on the purpose. We start with some more surface level strategies like previewing, skimming, scanning. These help us quickly get the topic, the general idea, or locate specific information. Then we got clustering, which is about chunking phrases rather than reading word by word. This improves fluency indeed. And then we move into deeper strategies, predicting, inferring, and reading actively, which help readers engage with meaning that's not always obvious. Understanding text structure and cohesive devices helps with following the logic of a text. We also have vocabulary strategies like inferring the meaning of unknown words and noticing the style and purpose of the writing. Finally, readers also evaluate, integrate, review, and sometimes read to present, depending on what they need to do with the text. The takeaway here is that strategic reading isn't just one size fits all. It's all about choosing the right tools for the job or for the task. As we wrap up this section on reading, let's briefly touch on how to evaluate call materials for reading practice. Here are a few things to consider. Learning potential. Does the tool offer opportunities for learners to focus on form and develop skills? Learner fit. Is it age appropriate? Is it interesting? Can it be tailored to the learner's needs? Explicit teaching. Are there clear focus areas? And does the material allow for preparation or follow-up? Interaction. Does it support communication either with the computer or with others? Evaluation. Can we get meaningful feedback on the learner's performance? Finally, strategy development. Does it help learners build strategies they can employ beyond the classroom? So it's about making intentional choices, selecting tools that support not just reading, but strategic, engaging, and learner-centered reading. Before we end the reading part, here is a great tool for teaching reading. There is a website named Breaking News English. It offers thousands of ready-made lessons based on current news stories. And the best part is it's available in different levels. Some reading passages comes with 3 levels or 4 or 5 levels, sometimes with 7 different levels, which is great from beginner to advanced. So you can use it for vocabulary building, reading fluency, listening, and even follow-up discussions. It's free, kind of up to date, and super easy to integrate into your lesson planning. I suggest that you explore it on your own using the link here. All right, here is the fun part, general introduction to writing. We want to learn what writing is, the importance of writing, elements of writing, and some other tools I want to introduce you to improve your writing pedagogy in the class. Let's get started. All right, before we start, let me just correct myself what I said earlier about what writing is. What I really meant to say was what teaching writing is actually. Anyway, writing isn't just something we do for school. It's an everyday task, from sending text messages, emails, to filling out forms or creating content online. What makes writing special is that it's usually done for an audience and it has a purpose. This means the type of language we use, formal, informal, descriptive, persuasive, they all depend on who we are writing for and why. And it also plays a role in promoting reflection. Writing gives learners the chance to slow down and think carefully about the language they're using, which is great for deeper learning and long-term retention and long-term development as well. And finally, writing is a form of self-assessment. It reveals how well learners understand grammar, vocabulary, spelling, and structure, all of which make it a valuable tool, not just for communication, but also for noticing gaps and improving. So, writing isn't just output, it's a powerful tool for building language awareness. When we teach writing, it's helpful to think of it as having two key elements, the product and the process. The product refers to the final written text, for example, an opinion paragraph, a formal letter, or an academic essay. This is what students are expected to produce by the end of the task. It's usually evaluated based on grammar, structure, vocabulary, spelling, and how well it meets the writing goal. The process, on the other hand, focuses on how students get there. It includes steps like brainstorming ideas, organizing thoughts, drafting, getting feedback, revising, and editing. This approach sees writing as something that evolves, not just something that happens in one shot. So, when designing writing tasks, we need to consider both clear expectations for the final product and support throughout the writing process. So, when we look at how writing is taught in Quebec primary curriculum, it's framed as a linear process with three main stages: prepare, compose, and revise. The emphasis is on using strategies at each stage, whether that's brainstorming, organizing ideas, or revising drafts. The model is clearly process-oriented, and it aims to build students' confidence by showing that writing can be broken down into manageable steps. But of course, this is just a bit of generalization. Writing isn't always this neat and linear. But it provides a helpful foundation for younger learners. All right, my mic is dead, so I'm recording mic free. Here the focus is on the secondary level. The writing process, as you see, becomes more recursive rather than strictly linear. Students don't just move from step A to step B to C. Instead, they circle back, revisiting earlier stages like idea generation, feedback, and revision multiple times. This allows for more reflection and self-evaluation. Just like the primary cycle, this is still process-oriented, but the emphasis here is on flexibility and thinking critically at every stage. Again, these are kind of generic, but they show how writing instruction evolves with the learner's cognitive and linguistic growth. So, why is writing in the primary cycle often taught as a linear process than a recursive one? Mainly because students need more guidance and scaffolding. Younger learners or younger writers, let's say, are still getting familiar with the basics of writing, like organizing ideas, grammar, spelling, punctuation, generally the mechanics of writing. So breaking the process into clear, manageable steps like prepare, compose, revise helps them reduce the cognitive load. And at this stage, the focus is more on introducing strategies than on going back and reworking drafts multiple times. So we can say using a scaffolded approach like this can help students build confidence and foundation before tackling a more recursive writing. This slide outlines what a linear approach to writing might look like in an ELT classroom. We start with a discussion and brainstorming. We get the students to generate and share ideas. Then we move into fast writing to help learners quickly get thoughts onto paper, followed by rough drafting. After that, there is a preliminary self-evaluation stage where students reflect on what they've written. Then comes structuring. We organize ideas logically, and this leads into the first draft. From there, we move to peer or group feedback, followed by a second draft. And finally, there is self-editing and proofreading before producing the final draft. So it's a step-by-step progression that's clear and easy for learners to follow. Unlike the linear approach we've just talked about, the model presented here shows that writing is recursive, meaning that writers often move back and forth between stages. For example, you might generate ideas, start drafting, then go back to brainstorming or restructuring based on feedback and evaluation. So there is like a constant loop of reviewing, evaluating, and refining. And this, in fact, reflects how experienced writers actually work. They revisit and reshape their text as they go, instead of moving step by step and in a fixed linear fashion. Here is a fun and engaging way to get your students right. You may give them a picture like this one and ask them to describe what's happening, who's involved, what's going on, and what might happen next. This kind of visual prompt encourages students to observe carefully, use descriptive language, and practice narrative writing. Another great technique is using a model text along with a problem-solving task. For example, students read this short description of Hungary, then use the same structure to write about other countries using the map and data. This reinforces both form and content because students are not just copying, they are applying a pattern to new information. And this helps them internalize the language and structure. Here is another creative technique for teaching writing, which is basically a dictation activity. The teacher pretends to be on the phone, asking for directions like how to get to someone's house. The students act as the listener, taking notes as if they're on the other end of the call. Afterwards, they compare their notes and see how accurate and complete their versions are. It's a simple way to practice listening, note-taking, and real-world writing all in one. This technique gives students a structural framework for their writing. For shorter pieces, we guide them to include a topic sentence, one or two supporting ideas, and a conclusion. For longer pieces, however, we expand that structure and start with an introduction, followed by multiple topic sentences and supporting details, and wrapping up with a conclusion. But it's key to remember, these are just models, not strict rules. As Reims puts it, models should show what students could do, not what they should do. So far, we've looked at some traditional yet effective techniques for teaching writing. Now let's shift gears and briefly touch upon how we can leverage technology, specifically through 6 practical tips for teaching writing with call. It starts with selecting the right model texts, then choosing tools that support both genre awareness and linguistic development. We also want to teach students how to use feedback from the computer, create authentic writing opportunities, include explicit evaluation, and importantly, help learners develop writing strategies over time. So we should keep them in mind, these practical tips in mind when designing writing tasks with call. All right, here I want to introduce you some practical tools you can integrate at each stage of the writing process. For example, for pre-writing, especially brainstorming, you can use Mindomo or MindMeister. For writing, you may consider using Google Docs, Virtual Writing Tutor, or Hemingway app. For post-writing, you can use Story Jumper, for example. Again, there might be some overlap between them, but each tool supports a different step, which makes writing more engaging, interactive, and guided for learners. Now I'll just quickly show you what the interface looks like on Mindomo and MindMeister in the following slide, just to give you a feel for how these tools work in practice. And this is MindMeister interface. As you can see, you can map out pre-writing, writing, and post-writing activities here. And we got a virtual writing tutor interface here. As you can see, it can provide you with word count, grammar checker, score essay, and punctuation checker, and also vocabulary checker. So I suggest that you explore a virtual writing tutor. There might be some interesting features that might be very beneficial to your classroom teaching. And finally, let's look at Story Jumper, which is a fun, user-friendly platform where students can create and publish their own digital storybooks. What is different about Story Jumper is that it encourages creativity and ownership in the writing process. Now let's talk a little bit about artificial intelligence. We want to learn what standard AI is and compare it to generative AI. And we also want to learn some pedagogical affordances of AI in writing pedagogy. All right, let's clarify the difference between standard AI versus generative AI. Question 1. Which one refers to computer systems that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, and decision making? So you may share your response in the chat or in the comments on YouTube, or we'll discuss this in class. Well, the right answer is standard AI. Question 2. Oh, for sure, the second one going to be generative AI. Which one can create new content, such as text, images, audio, and video based on large amounts of training data? It can produce novel and original outputs. And that is generative AI. So that is the difference between a standard AI and generative AI. So generative AI, as the name indicates, it is capable of producing novel and original outputs. Now let's overview some pedagogical applications or affordances of generative AI. Gen AI can create personalized reading and listening materials, simulate dialogues for a speaking practice, offer instant individualized writing feedback, support vocabulary learning through flashcards and quizzes, and even act as an interactive tutor who provides learners with practice and explanations anytime, anywhere. So we can strongly claim that AI use is not just about automating tasks. It's about enhancing access, personalization, adaptation, and practice opportunities in meaningful ways. All right, before I end the lecture, I'm going to ask you to explore some Gen AI tools in week 4, and please focus on reading and writing. You may consider exploring ChatGPT, Paper Digest for literature review, Elicit for automating parts of researchers' workflows, ChatPDF, and Chrome plugins like Talk to ChatGPT or YouTube Summary. You may also consider skimming through these optional readings, like a teacher's prompt guide to ChatGPT and ChatGPT prompts. All right, that is the end of lecture 4. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.